Full time. We'll call this special meeting to order for September 26, 2024, 7 p.m. Let us all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Clerk Lucero, could you please call the roll?
Bartholomew. Here. Rosso.
Here.
Parker.
Present.
Care.
Here.
Fowler.
Yes.
Poznansky.
Here.
Edwards.
There's no Edward. Okay, we have approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as is. Support.
Motion by Fowler, support by Parker. All in favor of approving agenda?
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? We have none opposed. We now have the time of public comment. If you would like to take the floor, step up to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Sharon Smith, 377 North Main Street. First, thank you, trustees, for calling this meeting. I think at the last meeting, the clerk had requested that you give immediate attention to this, so glad that you've got this going. At that last meeting, I have to say I came away from that quite disturbed, and I've been thinking about it nonstop. I've got a lot of questions that came from all of that thinking. Number one is, are we really insolvent? If we are, why wasn't this identified during budget meetings? Has the forensic audit been completed? If not, why not? It was voted on to be approved and done. What exactly leads the clerk to think we are insolvent? How long do we have before we declare bankruptcy? How does that affect property values? I've looked online and I see that it can, it can't. You know, there are arguments both ways. That's upsetting. Now, if this was just language for the sake of making an impact, then say so and walk away from that statement. The clerk stating where our servers are located in the office because people can break in and destroy them, that probably shouldn't have been said at a public meeting. Also, questions about outfitting the office with new desks, chairs, cabinets, etc. That's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. And the clerk basically stating that if we don't act, he'll be contacting the Michigan Employment Relations Commission. To me, that's bullying at best and blackmail at worst. Further adding to costs, the clerk wants to allow work from home. That will require laptops. That will require setting up a VPN for access. That's a lot of money. Also, the cost of the laptops. Do we have to pay another full day of work? I don't know if the people working in the office are getting paid for 4 days, or like the treasurer getting paid for 5 but working 4. So obviously, if they're only getting paid for 4, they need to be paid for 5 if that's what they'll be working. So that's additional cost as well. And so that, in closing, makes me think maybe the insolvency is going to come after we spend all of this money meeting the clerk's demands. So, thank you.
Do we have more public comment? This is the time after the floor is closed. This will be discussion between the board. Just want to make sure. Okay, we're going to close public comment and move into our business item of critical issue details and plan of action. From here, I will say, as we lead into this discussion, that we all take a deep breath, because it's clear that the words that the clerk spoke have struck a chord and gotten your attention. They're not too horribly off base of what I've been trying to express, the need for us to care for our assets, plan, stop reacting, no more reactive management. Maybe not the way I would state it, but definitely not too far off base, that should we not act soon, should we not address the issues that need to be addressed, it's not going to be too long before there is major issues that potentially we cannot walk back from. We all live, well, a majority of us live in the very old homes, 100-year plus. We all know what it is when those windows get to the point that you just can't save them anymore. We all understand this. And at this point, I will let the board have the floor to discuss the topic.
What is the topic? It doesn't say on here at all what it is.
That is the topic that was requested.
And if it's a financial thing, and we're going insolvent only because we learned that from Facebook, that seems to be where I'm getting information from about this meeting. Didn't we just have an audit?
We have an audit every year.
Yep, and we passed with flying colors for the last 50, 60 years. So I don't understand this.
The board,
And
the
the
board
clerk
has the
can't
floor
call
to
a meeting.
discuss what it would like. This was the topic that was requested from the trustees that called the meeting.
There, and it's the same type of thing. There was more than one trustee that called the meeting, and it was largely based on some community response as well. But I think Matt's got a good point, and it's a good place for us to start. For us to know a little bit about why insolvency could be an issue when audits have been great, things have been rolling along, we've been under budget. So we could start with that one and find out, because that was a big concern I heard from folks.
If we could all just take a moment to pull your microphones closer. I have had many comments of not being able to hear us, even in the audience and on the video.
Can I make a statement? Okay.
Part of your,
All right. Please, I prepared a statement today. I'd like to address how we got here being here at the meeting tonight. On Thursday, September 19th, I was notified that trustees Rosso, Parker, and Fowler were concerned about the report I gave on Monday, September 16th. In an email to President Poznanski, trustee Rosso outlined their concerns. They then demanded that I provide descriptive information of my concerns as well as a plan of action. This was because they felt my report contained impactful words with vague information given. In an open letter to each trustee, I explained that I did not believe this meeting to be prudent, as it takes me away from vital tasks that I am currently addressing. I stated that I would not have a plan of action or be able to address additional concerns as per my report, that in order to do so would require a full assessment, and that my full assessment would take 180 days to complete. I believe it crucial that I be thorough in my assessment, and that anything less, would be a disservice to this village. Because of this fact, I felt this meeting was premature and not a good time, or good use of time or funds, as this meeting is also an added expense to the resident. Furthermore, I stated there are additional factors that factor into my overall initial assessment. Some of these I cannot speak about as they require additional supporting documentation, and some are legal in nature, and I simply cannot speak about these issues at this point in time. I understand that my report may have been alarming and has caused concern amongst the residents of the village of Romeo. It brought me no pleasure to report my findings, and my statements were not made lightly. As where my findings are concerning, my intent was to report on the information that I had been able to dig up at that point as acting clerk. I was quite clear that this initial assessment was by no means exhaustive, being cursory at best. What was of great concern for me was that all of my findings had come to light during my 2.5 weeks on the job. Mind you, those 2.5 weeks were not consecutive either. The intent of my report was not to create discontent or hysteria, as one trustee had put it, and to that end, I deeply apologize to the residents. I simply sought to report my findings, the issues surrounding them with concerns to causation, identify solutions for immediate issues, and have an open dialogue about my report. Instead, not one trustee questioned me or sought clarification about any part of my report that evening, with the lone exception being Trustee Kerr speaking to me after the meeting. Furthermore, I had met up with Trustees Parker and Rosso, as well as Miss Sharon Smith that night, and at no time did anyone address my report. To that end, I asked the question, if my report was so concerning, then why did no one address it given the multiple opportunities to do so? I would also like to quickly address one specific issue, if I may. The statement regarding the 40 years of mismanagement of the village was not a personal attack on any of my predecessors. It was not an attempt to malign or disparage any past clerk or the work they had done. As stated in my report, the evidence showed that the mismanagement was not due to malicious intent. It was due to situational management requiring my predecessors to operate in survival mode. Again, simply put, we as a village asked or required too much of one individual. Running the village is too large of a task to put on the shoulders of one person. They did their duties to the best of their abilities and kept the village afloat. But tasks that fell through the cracks, as mundane or insignificant as they may seem, began to build through a compounding effect, and at the end of the day, turned into large issues. Then, add on the gross negligence of the former president and clerk, and their misunderstanding of their roles, authority, and reach, you further exacerbate an already bad situation, stressing it almost to a breaking point. I do not want this meeting to be a regurgitation of my previous report. I believe it important that we as a village are on the same page. To that end, I will gladly discuss my original report. Before I do, I'd like to address some additional concerns with this council. In a conversation with one trustee, I was asked why I did not expand on the summation that the village was close to being insolvent, not insolvent, but close, as a number of residents had raised that issue with them. I did not do so as I was more concerned with making the trustees aware of the identified issues. It was an oversight on my behalf. To that end, again, I apologize to the residents if I was vague in that regard. I presented a lot of information that night, and I do not know what may or may not be considered an issue with my report if no concerns are raised. This is why it is vital to have an open dialogue. Let me be clear. The statement dangerously close is a relative one. To be abundantly clear, the data as shown currently, the village could become insolvent in as soon as 10 years. If additional problems or issues compound on those outlined in my initial report, that date could be moved forward exponentially. Yes, we will not fold tomorrow, but this is not a long time in terms of government, nor is it when speaking about an entity that has been around for 180 years. 10 years represents roughly 5.5% of the lifespan of the village of Romeo. There are multiple other factors that can or will ramp up this estimated timeline as well. Roughly 2 weeks ago, I spoke with a trustee and the subject of an appointed village manager came up. As it was presented, the village manager would replace and assume the roles of the village clerk and village treasurer. They would also be imbued with some of the administrative roles of the president as prescribed by the General Law Village Act. I stated such a move is not good for a number of reasons. Not only would it literally take the voice and vote away from the resident, but this action would have detrimental effects on the village and equate to a proverbial death kiss. As stated previously, we are in this position because too much was asked of one person. This action would literally be putting us back into that situation. The larger problem with this is that with any trauma, if one is not able to heal correctly or fully, then the problem invariably will get worse if any additional trauma is incurred. What does this mean for the village? You will exponentially cut down that projected time till insolvency. It will become an insurmountable task so great that it will be nearly impossible to dig out from under. This act alone will quite possibly ensure that this village goes under. With regards to my emergency manager statement, we are currently underfunded in our legacy accounts. Yes, I understand our audits we pass, but the metrics by which they judge if you are solvent and doing well is also measured against your peers. So to that, as I said, we are currently underfunded in our legacy accounts. This alone qualifies us for emergency management, financial management, or at the very least, emergency financial management consultation, where the village will be required to report to the State Treasury Department monthly. Per the annual financial report that was provided to this board on January 22nd, 2024, at the Board of Trustees meeting, we are at a 51% funding rate for our pensions and a 29.5% funding rate for OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. The state minimum funding requirements are 60% for pensions and 40% for OPEB, respectively. The village's pension fund is $941,797 short of meeting the state's minimum funding requirement. Our total liability or obligation for pensions is $11,210,659, which we are $5,426,061 short. Our OPEB fund is $407,104 short of meeting the state's minimum funding requirement. The village's total liability for OPEB is $3,897,709, which we are short $2,745,729. Our current total liability to meet state minimum funding requirements is $1,348,901. In order to fully fund both at 100%, our total liability would be $8,171,790. The village also has a number of impending large expenditures that we cannot defer our obligations on as well. Our police contract is coming up for negotiation within the next year and a half. We need to update our wastewater treatment plant. We need to update all computers and tech over the next year. With regard to the last item, and Ms. Smith pointed on this, we do need to upgrade to laptops. It is a better move, but not only because it's a better move and we can get more done if we have people work from home, which we are at a point where it is all hands on deck. The extra time at home, yes, it is an added cost, but we are getting more done. The task per cost, or the cost per task is going to go down. As I stated in my original report, we have a ton of deficiencies that we need to address in order to start being more efficient in our tasks so that they cost less at the end of the day. But if I could touch on the computers, just to give you a case in point, Microsoft has stated that it will no longer service or support any operating system other than Windows 11 come October 2025. This forced obsolescence is going to come at a cost that we cannot avoid. In addition, our computers now do not meet the minimum requirements to run Windows 11, so we're going to have to spend this money regardless. And again, in addition to all these issues, there are other legal matters that cannot be discussed at this time, which could impact all of the aforementioned. We are at a pivotal moment here in the village. There are many issues before us, and we, as a community, must work together to ensure that this village is here for future generations. I need the board to work with my office to correct these issues. As stated in my report, I do not want the contentious and adversarial relationship that the board has held with the clerk's office in the past. This will take everyone putting aside their differences and working together towards a common goal. And I, too, have heard from other residents over this past week. And a shared sentiment is that maybe it's time for members of this board to either step up or step down and allow others the opportunity to tackle this issue and help the community. Whatever the makeup of this board is, though, it is incumbent upon it to act. To address whether I was bullying or blackmail, it wasn't. I'm sorry that it may have come off that way or that you view it that way. It was a matter-of-fact statement that we are in violation of a number of issues, and that if you just listen to the end of my statement, you could take away that I am trying to blackmail or bully, and I was not. I simply stated that at the end of the day, I am duty-bound to report these issues. Not only is it violations with MERC, but it is also now my OSHA issues as well. Now, when I was asked to have this meeting, Trustee Rosso had asked that I expand on the fire safety issues. And as I stated, Trustee Rosso had come into the office, and I had asked her to come upstairs to show her the issues, to which she replied, I had already seen upstairs. So I figured she knew exactly what I was talking about. But as further evidence, I had Chief Steve Nakis from Romeo Bruce Fire Department come out and do an assessment. And these were his findings. Fire signage. 3 out of 4 emergency lights on the main floor are not operational. We don't have any signage on the stairs indicating the direction you need to go if there's a fire. We need an emergency light on the stairs. Multiple signs throughout the office. We need multiple signs throughout the office directing people in case of an emergency. The door to the office that is just past the lobby needs to swing outwards with a breaker bar. This is because if there is a fire and you're crawling on the ground, you're not thinking to open the door towards you. If there's a breaker bar, you just hit it and you can get out. We need a secondary egress or an exit. The window by the server has been identified as a possible place for that door. Extinguishers need to be recharged, and they're not mounted to the wall. That's a violation. The bathroom wall is splitting a vent. That's not code. Upstairs, the furnace should be in its own room with a fire door. The venting to the furnace is wrong. The furnace needs to have 3-foot clearance on all sides. Currently, we're a foot to a foot and a half. There's flammable material all around it, being documents, and the issue is we have no place for that stuff to go, which is why I said we need to upgrade and get a secure document room and get fire safes and storage cabinets that are fire rated. There needs to be 3 feet of clearance around a breaker panel. There is not. The ceiling throughout the entire building is against fire code. Ceiling tiles need to be flush, and not all ceiling tiles can be flush because the way certain things were built into this building. And what Chief Steve had identified is that with that, we now create a path for fire to easily get to. And the fact that the ceiling does not have any kind of insulation in it to act as another barrier, we essentially have cubic tonnage above our head of accelerant that if fire gets up there, it will just go, and there goes the building. There's also multiple gaps all over the place that create more routes for fire to penetrate and just go crazy. So all these things are the things I talked about, and like I said, you called this meeting a week after my initial assessment that, as I identified, is cursory at best. But there are multiple factors that go into it. I never said insolvent, but dangerously close, and I do believe that. As I said, I came from private business, and I measure everything when I look at financials, you have to take everything into account. I also, as I stated in the last meeting, I measure everything against what does it mean for the resident, because at the end of the day, I am a resident as well. And my words and my actions will affect me at the end of the day, either positively or negatively. I did not make these statements lightly. It brought me no great joy to report what I had found. At the end of the day, we do have a massive need to spend money on infrastructure, and this is not me bullying you. It just isn't. It is being matter of fact. We have too many deficiencies that are costing us too much money, and we need to start addressing them, because if we don't, maintenance is literally killing us. It's death by 1,000 cuts. One issue, as I stated, we need to digitize our records. Right now, our current system, the cost per task, if we have to go search for anything, instead of being able to pull up that document quickly, we are now paying people to thumb through a mass amount of files to find the document they're looking for. It is just inefficient, especially when there are resources available and practices that we can put in place that over time they do pay for themselves. I think we're getting hung up on I realize I created a little bit of a paradox saying we don't have a lot of money, but we need to spend a lot of money. I understand that. But in spending money, you are saving money over the long haul. You need to spend money to be efficient. It's like, if I could give an analogy, what's the best way to build a championship team? You go out and you get the veterans. They cost a little bit more, but you get a championship team. If you invest in young players, it takes time to build them, and it's going to cost more over the long run to meet your end goal. And that's where we're at right now. We need to upgrade to be efficient. We need to upgrade so that we do survive, that we are with the times, so that at the end of the day, as I attested the first night in my report, at the end of the day, if services and tasks are not being performed efficiently and being offered at a diminished rate, then the resident does suffer, because they are the end user of those services and tasks. So, again, I did not make these lightly. I was not being hyperbolic. This was all the information that was in front of me that you guys have as well. And, I can't speak to why I view it a different way as you. And again, I'm open to discourse. I want to work with this board. I stepped up for this appointment because the village had a need. And the village was beginning to suffer because we were going back to the practices that I've already identified were the issues, the root cause of a lot of things in this village. And I'm fully committed. I'll take this job as long as the voter will have me. I'm not trying to politicize. I'm not trying to play politics, but there are serious issues that need to be addressed, and I'm trying to address them. The issue also, if I can go back, the issue with calling this meeting, as I stated, it is taking me away from the tasks that I sought out to do that are literally leaving us exposed to legal action. Since Thursday last week, I have been in meeting after meeting with our accountants to get the documents for tonight so that I could come to you guys with the actual numbers that were just in the book. I want the actual numbers that were put into the book and how they got to those numbers. I also plan, as I I stated in my open letter to you all that I will be putting together a pro forma for the village because we need it. We need to be able to have a clear plan to look forward. You know, as President Poznansky has said, we need to start looking at our assets and depreciating them correctly so we know what is coming up to be replaced and when. Right now, the village has lived in a reactive state for so long. We need to start being proactive. Being in a reactive state it always costs more money. And if we're working with limited funds, we can't afford to be inefficient anymore. We just can't. So, to that, I am open to any of your questions or comments regarding my original report.
Well, I'd like to address the retiree and the OPEB accounts. The reason that we're not up to 100%, but yet we pass audits every single year is because you're right, no one is up to 100%.
Right.
The reason that is because the state changed the laws several years ago.
I
You're
agree.
not telling that.
Right.
So we are funding these accounts, to bring them up
Right.
to this 60%. But you're not letting these people know that. You're just saying, oh, we're down millions of dollars. We have years to pay that, and we know that, and we have a plan for it.
Currently, right now, per the state, 60% of communities are at 72% funding or greater.
Yeah. So when this happened, there was an unfunded mandate by the
Oh,
state.
I'm aware. Yeah, I know they
So-
moved the goalpost completely.
Yes, they did big time. And yes, we are working towards catching up to that, as are many other communities.
My concern is because there's a precedent there, right? We're identifying it. What if the state moves the goalpost again and decides it needs to be funded right now? That has the ability to collapse things, and all I am
But it'll
stating-
collapse more than Romeo. It'll
I
collapse
don't
the state.
disagree, but I don't care about other communities. I care about the village. of
You're right, so
Romeo.
realistically, they couldn't do that.
Realistically, they could because they already did.
No, but they gave time. You're right, they did. They moved it up, but they gave time. As far as assets are concerned, that's another story. But I want to address the millions of dollars you say we owe on the OPEB and the retiree accounts, which we do.
And we are working towards it.
And we are working towards it,
And
and there's
last
been a
year-
plan for probably 5 years to take care of
And
that.
I did not
Yeah.
say there wasn't.
And we are funding it every single year.
And we were able to grab a grant last year
Yep.
for $130,000, which relieved that pressure from the people. The thing with OPEB, though, is it's a fluctuating number. So one year, we might actually hit the 60%. And what happens is, until people fall off, meaning our retirees pass away, and then someone retires and
Well,
joins the
there'll be
pension,
more,
then we
yeah.
have, it's this recurring. So sometimes we might be funded that year, depending. And then other years, we are less because now we have another liability that jumped into
I
the
just
pool.
don't want this put
We
out
are
there as
working.
we're being fiscally irresponsible. And that's what it sounds like.
I
you're
did not
putting out
state
there.
that.
In
But
so
the
many
way you
words
word
you
it, though,
did.
Jamie, I mean, you use in terms like death kiss, and what that projects to the residents and the people, even sitting at this board, is negative. You didn't mention anything Matt mentioned about, yes, there's a limit, but we've got time. You know, so the way it's coming across, and what I've been approached by almost every day in the village from the residents is, how bad are we? You know, the terms and the method and the delivery, it was alarming. And yes, I didn't approach you initially that night. I was taken back. I'm like, I gotta recollect and think about this. I'm not just gonna start spurting stuff, because I have no idea what we were talking about, to some extent, right? I mean, you talk about 40 years of mismanagement, and in 2.5 weeks, I mean, what did you see that, no past clerk, no audit, you're talking legal issues. Is Mark aware of these legal issues now? And where were they before? I mean, 2.5 weeks, I mean, what did you flip a magic page and everything was just there? I mean, that's concerning for 40 years that no one else saw this coming. Even in the past 5-10 years, no one saw it, right?
I don't
Like
disagree.
the OPEB changed 5-6 years ago, or what it was?
It was maybe
So
more
maybe
than
that's
that,
more
but yes.
current, but what happened?
Again, I'm not going to speak to the things that I don't have all of the supporting documents to, and the legal things that are potential legal pitfalls. I have consulted with Mr. Clark on a number of them. We're not there yet to talk to you guys until it shakes out. And I have also addressed it with you in private that we have some issues, and I've touched on them a little bit. So there was no magic wand waved to find them. They were literally sitting right on top. And that is what is concerning. To your point, if no one else found them, and I literally found it just sitting on top. Again, it gives me no great pleasure to say the things that I've said, but it is incumbent upon me to inform this board of the issues that I've found. And I understand if it might have taken you aback because, as you've identified, no one else has found these issues.
I'm gonna cut in real quick because, I mean, you touch on the pension and the OPEB. When you say you've addressed the issues, all you've talked about is, we're not gonna be funded, we're not gonna do this with the pension, the OPEB, yes, but what else? And if we can't address it, why are we alarming people if we can't address it at this time? And I hope Mark's aware of everything, I hope our accountants are aware, because, not trying to be rude, but you're guaranteed a couple more months, right? If you don't get the vote, or you get elected, or someone else runs, or whatever that might
Right.
be, are you just walking away, right? Or is someone else aware of what's going on? Because if you're not gonna tell us, you don't wanna address us about it, who knows?
It's imprudent to address it just yet until all of the supporting documents.
Is
Now,
someone else aware?
yeah, I already said yes. I've already addressed it with Mr. Clark. I've addressed it with President Boznansky of my findings.
Okay.
Yes. There is, legally, I cannot come out and talk about this right now, no matter how hard you push, because it is, what it will open us up to, it's not good. And it can be taken care of, it can. But, and I promise you, when I stood there the night of my appointment, I told you that this needs to be ran as a business. It needs to be gone through line by line. And it requires an individual to be thorough and attentive, and that's what I have been doing. And I told you I would bring to you issues as they arise, but my overall assessment was going to take 180 days. Now, granted, you are correct. If I don't get elected and I don't have 180 days, yes, I would definitely pass off all of my findings to the next person behind me because, again, I live here and it will affect me. I cannot bury my head in the sand because it will affect me. So to that's as much as I can state. And I am trying to be transparent with you and rope you guys in as much as possible. But if what you are advocating for is me just to not tell you guys anything until it becomes critical mass, right? And I did say that, use that term, because I truly feel we have, like the things I identified that are coming in the next year. We are in a perfect storm moment because all these things are hitting at once that we need to address. And a lot of them are for the sake of efficiency too. It just makes sense to go the extra mile to ensure that we future-proof things for the sake of efficiency. And, you know, unlike my immediate predecessor, as you guys have identified, that may not have always been upfront or communicative, I am trying to do better and be communicative, and instead of, you know, hey, well, that's good, let's move forward and turn over a new leaf, I'm getting met with opposition already, and essentially being vilified, which is fine. It's fine. But it's incumbent upon me to bring you issues. That is my job, is to report to you. the issues that I find. So, you know, if we could go back to when you guys were talking about your rules and procedures, that you want to limit the clerk's report to 3 minutes. If you want that, so be it, but you won't get, I have business that needs to be addressed with you guys. And if you want to limit my time to do so, then you can't sit there and complain that you aren't being informed about stuff
No,
if you
may I
want to
interrupt
limit.
you? Your report is different than agenda items. Your report is just something, things that have been going on, updates, village parties, whatever. If you have something that important, it needs to be on the agenda. That should be an agenda item, not just something you throw into a report.
I would argue that it is part of a report because it's coming from from the clerk's office and has to do with everything inside the clerk's office.
And you can throw it in there, but if it needs discussion or decisions or
Right.
important information, it needs to be an agenda item.
Such
Okay.
as new computers, that should be an agenda item. Should be brought up during budget time, brought up whenever. All kinds of these fire issues, I'm sure we've been inspected several times by the Bruce Township Fire Department. But if it's still a problem, that needs to be brought up as an agenda item, not just thrown out there to the world, and then we don't even get a chance to ever respond to it or
You
anything.
did have a chance to respond to it though, Mr. Edwards. Per your rules of procedure, I said, I am open for question or comment. It is upon the president to shut that down, and she didn't. She asked the board, anybody? And nobody raised issue, had a question or a comment. I was open. I wanted to talk about the things that I raised. And I also said in my report that these items that I am listing out, I will bring budgets to you guys as they develop. But I wanted you to be aware of the things that I'm finding and just kind of to brace yourselves that these things are coming.
These things are coming, but they're not, that doesn't make us insolvent, and that's what you've put out to the village of Romeo.
Again, that statement is also based on a number of factors, some of which
Have you
have
talked to
not
Plant
been presented.
Moran at all?
Yes, I have.
Okay, about these OPEB and?
About everything and our concerns, yes.
Yeah, it's alarming, because we pay Plant Moran good money.
Oh, we pay them
And
good
if
money,
have-
and
if
they give
haven't
us
brought
a,
this to our attention,
they're rated by the
Something.
state of Michigan and everything else, so
Yeah, I understand.
I don't understand, well,
So I have a question. The
Yeah.
3 trustees who called for this meeting, I guess I want to know what was it that you wanted to accomplish or have accomplished tonight?
To have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
amongst all of us and Mr. Lucero, and have the residents have an opportunity to hear, because there have been a lot of comments and questions. So it's better to do it together, so everyone hears the same information, and we can move forward. But Mr. Lucero, I also want to specify, I am not trying to create an adversarial relationship.
Right.
I have reached out to you, you know that. We have
Correct.
talked. You keep saying that no one asked you, but this is us asking, this is us caring. This is us wanting to hear it. And the residents need to hear it as well. So we do care, and that's how we do this. This is what we need to do when we hear language like that, to get more information. And you've provided a
Right.
lot more tonight than you did the first night. And I think if some of that had been said a little bit more the first night, and it might have gone over. Remember, I said it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right, and I don't disagree, and if I could touch on a point that I made, I don't know what may be an issue or concern unless it's brought up. So when I'm trying to give information that I deem critical, that you guys need to be made aware of, and I state, and I'm expecting, you know, anybody to address anything with me, and I say I'm open for questions or comments, I'm expecting, you know, somebody to seek clarification, and like I said, I was taken aback that night that nobody did, and I understand, it was a lot of information to
It wasn't.
process.
It was a lot of statements, a lot of comments. As far as facts and information, there wasn't a lot, and I think that's what
Again-
created the concern.
Again, it's incumbent upon you, if you're seeking those, to ask them, and I was available for it.
We are here, everyone deserves transparency.
yeah, and like I stated in the meeting also about the rules and procedures, adding stuff to the agenda last minute, it's not good, right? No one has time to process, right? If we would have had your report ahead of time in the packet, great. Or if we would have had any other information supporting it, or it was an agenda item that had information attached, there probably would have been plenty of questions ready that night. But it was a lengthy statement that carried on, used a lot of scary words, and yeah, I don't think anyone was ready to have a question formulated at that time. You might have had the answers ready, but we weren't.
I think, as where you interpret my words as scary, I was being matter of fact. I wanted you guys to understand the weight of the things that I am talking about. It is not a matter of just being hyperbolic for the sake of doing so. It does nobody any good to just be hyperbolic or just use words to use them. These are issues, again, I can't stress this enough. These are issues that I was able to dig up, and they were concerning. They were concerning. And again, it's incumbent, and I do feel that I was being transparent in my report and telling you guys that, hey, these are issues that we gotta think about. And these are violations that, you know, could be violations, and it wasn't, again, any of the things I said, they were not threats. They were not bullying, they were not blackmail. I am duty-bound. The office of the clerk is duty-bound to the resident, to the stakeholders, to the staff. I am duty-bound. It does not matter how I personally feel if things are bad and they don't get better. And that's all I was saying, is that I'm going to come to you guys with these issues as they develop, so that hopefully we can figure them out. But if nothing happens, if we get stymied or just bogged down and there is no movement, nobody wants to do anything, I am duty-bound. At a certain point, it needs to be addressed by someone. And again, when I use words like death kiss, it's because that's the only word that fits the situation. We are literally at a critical moment here. I am not trying to gin up hysteria or create undue stress. Yes, I understand how you guys might feel blindsided because you feel as though no one else brought these issues up. And to go back, Plant Moran has done a phenomenal job. But again, what they measure us against are our peers. And I will ask you, does it matter if you're in a class, let's do a hypothetical. If you're in a class and 20% of the class fails the final and you're part of that class, does it matter if you got a 59% and your friend got a 23%? No, you all failed. It does not matter. And that is what I am addressing. As much as I care about surrounding communities, I live in Romeo.
But we haven't failed, as far as Plant Moran's concerned, and the state of Michigan is concerned. We have not failed in those responsibilities.
But, like I said, so when I say dangerously close, again, it is a relative term. And when you are talking, again, about a community that is 180 years old, 10 years, maybe 15, if we're lucky. And that is if we do nothing, mind you. And that is what I stated. I did not state that we're insolvent. I did not state that.
Yes, you did.
I did not state we were insolvent. No, I did not. And maybe, Mr. Edwards, the confusion is there because no one sought clarification. But I stated dangerously close to insolvency is my exact words. Dangerously close. And that's what I'm stating now. 10 to 15 years is dangerously close. Would you not agree?
Not necessarily, but we're not dangerously close either. I would argue we're not.
Making that clear at the meeting, that term of dangerously close is 10 to 15 years, but we do need to start acting now.
Would have been a lot,
Would have come across a lot better.
I
and
understand.
I wouldn't be getting approached every day.
I
I'm
understand.
hearing that there is
Miscommunication, a lot of it.
an unhappiness in communication style. You don't appreciate terms and the way that it's being laid out, that there wasn't enough. Mr. Lucero has acknowledged that, has said he will achieve to do better, and is always open to hear and further clarify. If we could move to what more information you would like, let's move on to those topics of what else would you like to hear that after 3 or 4 weeks on the job, he actually has answers for.
well, if he wants more, let's use the fire issues, okay? Put it down as an agenda item like Shelley did, have him go out and get quotes for what he needs, present them to the board, and we'll yay or nay them.
I feel as I said I would be doing that. I said I will bring these issues to the board as they develop, the budgets to the board as they develop. So to that end,
But instead, you just throw out hysteria. That's what I'm getting back from everybody in the village.
sir, then with all due respect, you didn't listen to my report. Because I literally said, as these develop, I will bring them to you for your consideration. That was not an attempt to create hysteria. I literally said those words. And again, I guess it goes back because you did not hear me say dangerously close. All you heard was me say insolvent, but I did in fact say
Dangerously close is so gray. That means so many different things to so many different people. Dangerously close might be a week away,
Okay, and I don't disagree.
or it could be 100 years away, according to what you're saying.
No,
So
100 years
dangerously
away
close
is not dangerously close.
is not descriptive.
But again, it comes down to, did you seek clarification? What I said was that I would bring you budgets as they develop. So, if it's a miscommunication, if it's the way I'm speaking, I am open to changing how I speak, be more descriptive. If that is what is required of me, or if that is what you guys are asking of me, I have no problem. I believed it to be a moment where we had open discourse. When I opened the floor, I believed we would have discourse, and we did not. So maybe that was an overestimation of what actually was going to happen. And again, I will attest that I do not know what issues with my words are issues if they are not brought up. So to that end, you have my word, I will be more descriptive. I will bring, per my original statement, I will be bringing budgets to you guys, and they will be on the agendas. I will be bringing them to you because it is critical that we address these issues. Because as we leave them out there longer and longer, they're going to become invariably more expensive to tackle. So it is just incumbent upon all of us to work together. I want to work with you guys. I do. I've said that multiple times. I said that night. But when my words are either not being listened to or twisted, we can't really work
Well,
together.
I think we want to really work with you. We really do. That's not the issue. But the issue is how it's presented.
Yeah.
That's just,
I
you set
think
the
we-
village off. You set the village on fire.
I feel that we've covered that. I think it's heard. I do want to, if we can just refresh and look back, not very far, we can see what 6 years of ineptitude has created in just 6 years. So so dangerously close. 6, 10, 15 years could be there when you get someone who's inept at their position. I feel that we finally have someone here who has the heart and drive and understanding, the care, and maybe came out of the gate full throttle. I think that we hear what you're saying, and we'll adjust going forward. Are there more specific things that we could speak to at the moment? Because to Ms. Smith's point, there are certain things that you should not say in an open public forum to put out there. It opens you up to certain liabilities. Other than those items, yes, I've spoken with Mr. Clark, have a legal issue that just came up today. There are many things that we juggle and deal with on a daily basis that, yeah, we don't address because those are the things, that's part of our job, that's what we do. Is there something else that we would like to discuss?
While we can't address them, the legal issues that you speak of, are those related to our financials?
There could be potential impact. Whenever there's legal issues, there's money involved either to defend, whether it is to go after, litigate, whatever the term is. And there's just time.
Are they direct, or indirectly I get with cost of related to
There
other
could
things,
be.
but is it a direct?
Can't talk to.
There could be, I don't know.
Mark, you're
That's
aware of
that is
these?
part of the research we're doing.
Let me just say that every year, the accounting firm that audits the village, lately it's been Plant Moran, before that, for a long time, 20-plus years, you had another auditor. And to my recollection, I could be wrong, I believe every one of the audits is, as the auditors
Mark,
call
microphone,
it,
please. Sorry.
a clean audit. The village has had clean audits, and if not, you're reported to the state of Michigan. I don't believe, at least in my tenure as the village attorney, that's ever happened. To your point, and to respond a little more narrowly, as part of the audit process, I am required to submit a letter. It's requested of me through the village president, and I have to submit what I call an audit letter to the auditor. In this case, the last number of years, it's been Plant Moran. And in there, I have to describe any pending litigation. So if the village is involved in any pending litigation, I describe it as to the specificity of it, the court, the litigants, the likelihood of success or failure in the litigation, and if there's failure, what is the possible cost to the village. It's a little bit of a predictive response. Additionally, I'm required to advise the auditor if I'm aware of anything that may not be subject to litigation, but could possibly rise to a claim and ultimately expose the village to a monetary loss, and if so, what might that amount of loss be? And I have written one of those letters every year since I've been the village attorney, which has been about 40 years, I think maybe a few years less. In any event, those are public record. You can look at my letters, and I stand by them. And so, in a I guess a broad way, but it's narrow in my mind, I find the village, from my narrow perspective, I'm not in the village hall, I don't check in there, I don't have a desk there, I don't participate in the day-to-day activities. But in terms of the financial impact on the village of things on a year-to-year basis, I stand by my letters, and they have always been received by the auditors, and they form a part of their audit that I believe they file with the state of Michigan. And so I don't see, based on the letters, the audit letters that I've written, I've never written one where my hair's been on fire, and I have felt that something needed to be immediately addressed.
Thank you. And if these are items that can't be addressed, I'm assuming publicly to the board, that because we're not hearing about them, is this something that would warrant a closed session to address the board?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I don't think any of the subjects that I have discussed with Mr. Lucero and Mrs. Poznansky would be an appropriate consideration in a closed session. Because if you look at the requirements for a closed session pending litigation, there isn't any. Discussion of a position in a collective bargaining agreement. We have no pending collective bargaining agreements. Employee discipline, if you look at the narrow, there are exceptions to the Open Meetings Act that allow you to go into closed session. You would not, if you tried to, I would advise you against it.
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Lucero,
Thank
and
you.
the whole board, and Mark and the residents for your time. It's greatly appreciated. I think it wasn't just us that had the questions based on the number of people that showed up, and I hope everybody is satisfied. Thank you.
We had a motion by Bartholomew, support by Edwards to adjourn the meeting. Do we have an all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? There are none opposed. Okay. Have a good night.